Hello and welcome to the trade setup. In this video, we are looking at Intel. It is time for another update. And on this chart, we have identified on the larger time frame an initial 5-wave move to the upside within a wave 1 and a 3-wave correction in a follow-up wave 2 perfectly into the last level of support at $17.6 before reversing out of this area of support and generating even a potential additional initial 5-wave move to the upside that we are able to track for potential extensions but does not require any extensions, and reaching the area of support we would track for an internal wave 2 would provide an extremely promising opportunity, as we have very clear levels of support and very clear levels where the structure starts shifting its probabilities into something much more bearish going on. So we basically know very well that below $22.5 within this interpretation, we would be looking for an overall failure where we would expect a break even below the beginning of this entire wave 1 to the upside at $12. Now, in this structure, as I was mentioning, it is still possible to see extensions in this push to the upside. However, they are not necessary. We are able to identify an initial 5-wave move to the upside within a leading diagonal, and we are able to already look for the larger wave 2 correction. Although I want to make it absolutely clear, it is not necessary to form this wave 2 at this point, as yes, extensions are still possible, and we have even been tracking one of those interpretations here in green that would allow us to look for this to instead form a 5-wave move to the upside against $41.4, where more recently we have completed a 3-wave correction within this area, exactly what we would expect of such a movement, and we have seen already quite a nice reversal to the upside. Now, I'm not here to predict whether we will now form this green interpretation or the yellow structure. I am here to track these roadmaps, to track the relevant levels of support and the relevant levels of resistance that would provide us more or less interesting opportunities, yeah? We know clearly that once we get into the larger area of support here in yellow, the accumulation will start for us, yeah? Now, I'm not telling you to buy, it is ultimately your choice. This is just what I consider, or rather where I consider the accumulation area to start, yeah? $35.5 is for me the first level, and as we go lower and lower within this area of support, which is not a requirement, the risk reward ratio only improves, yeah? But to be clear, we do not need to go deep into this area of support. A 3-wave correction into the first level of support, the 38.2% retracement, just a touch is all it needs to have fulfilled the minimum expectations. Now, in this structure, we were looking with high probabilities already for this to extend within at least a larger movement, at least another low once we had this initial push to the downside, as we did identify an impulse within this wave A. So an initial 5-wave move to the downside basically, which was strongly suggesting that after a 3-wave correction, we would expect with high probabilities at least another 5-wave move to the downside. Yeah, we even had here an area of resistance. I believe we removed it in the previous video, but the idea remains the same. We have been looking for this to form an additional 5-wave move to the downside, which has already been delivered in the previous video. We have fulfilled the minimum expectations of this structure, where we barely made a lower low within this as a supposed wave C, but it is clear within our green interpretation we can consider the correction complete. We had a 5-wave move to the downside, but since the previous video we actually got another low. So this actually makes for some interesting developments, and I wouldn't actually consider this typically to be part of the 5-wave structure to the downside. Yeah. Within this smaller time frame yellow interpretation, in fact, I will continue to consider that this wave 1 would have still bottomed here, as we were looking for a diagonal structure within this 5-wave move. we already had a 3-wave pattern here. We didn't need yet another 3-wave pattern, and this is rather telling me that we would have an overshoot within a correction in this area. So for the full context, in the previous video we even provided a smaller time frame area of support to track continuation to higher prices. And normally I would even consider this to have been a decent follow-up of this interpretation of this structure. We could have even considered this to be an initial 5-wave move to the upside, but we didn't hold any levels of support in the follow-up correction. Yeah, we invalidated any potential for this to be the beginning of a larger uptrend. So in the green interpretation, I would still need to consider this to have been the wave 4 bottom. But since within the structure to the downside, we already have a full count, and this is not really a 5-wave structure to me. I could maybe allow this to work out as a 5-wave structure, but I really don't believe it. It's not reliable enough for me. So since this isn't a reliable 5-wave structure, I can't look for this to have been an extension of the wave 5. I can't look for this to have been an A, B, C pattern instead of having here the wave 5 we had already in place since the previous video. So what is being suggested as more probable to me is the idea of a larger A, B, C pattern within an expanded flat correction, which means that this wave 2 in yellow would be able to be considered complete, wouldn't require any additional extensions higher, wouldn't require a reset, wouldn't require us to form another wave to the upside to complete the pattern. And that actually makes for an interesting point, as we are able right now to look for the larger wave 3 in the yellow interpretation to have started that could lead us to the larger area of support in yellow. Yeah, we had this drawn here on the chart for some time already, and we have been looking for a wave 3 to be taking us to our area of support. Now, if you enjoyed this video, it would be greatly appreciated if you leave a like, and if you want to keep up to date with our analysis, our expectations, it would be recommended to subscribe, as we actually post quite a lot of content, and you may even find out about some new stocks that we cover that are actually interesting opportunities. And in addition to that, if you enjoy our content and want to support us directly, you can check out our channel membership, and as a thank you for any of these actions, I would invite you to sign up for our channel newsletter, where you get access to our monthly top picks, where we identify for you specifically high quality structures and great opportunities where Intel has basically been on the foreground, and there have been some other interesting opportunities that have come along with our first newsletter. Now, the link for sign up is in the description and it is completely free, so I don't really see why you wouldn't take me up on that opportunity. Now, within this structure, we can now look for an ideal target for the wave 3 to the downside. This is, once again, assuming it occurs. I'm, once again, not predicting whether it is one scenario or the other that will succeed in forming. I'm just creating a roadmap to track along with the relevant levels of resistance and support, where we know breaking them would shift the probabilities more towards one scenario or the other. It's not a prediction that we are doing here. So, in this wave 3, for it to be a reliable wave 3, I would expect to reach at least the 138.2% extension of the wave 1. That sits at $37. That still wouldn't take us to our first level of support, but nonetheless, if this really is building a wave C, which I would strongly expect, I would be looking then still for a wave 4 correction and a 5th wave to take us even lower. And by the way, the wave 3 doesn't need to stop there, but that would be the minimum expectation for me to be able to track with some degree of reliability a follow-up in a wave 4. Now, even though the count and the structure is rather suggesting to me that the yellow structure is favorable, I cannot dismiss the possibility of a slightly different interpretation of the movement to the downside to be working out, and for the green interpretation to now have a full count within this structure, where we would be looking for an A, B, C pattern in this wave 5, as yes, we are tracking a diagonal structure within this green scenario. So For this, I would be watching for a potential area of support in this structure between the 38.2% retracement, so we are talking about the $46 level, down to $43. Additionally, a break below the 78.6% retracement would be yet another signal that this structure would see a breakdown. Yeah, we don't need to wait any longer for the break of $41.4 level for an indication that this structure is more likely to fail. Yeah, we get an early signal with this area of support in the case of a failure. Now, in the even smaller time frame, we can notice that we do not yet have an initial 5-wave move to the downside. Yes, I know it might look like this would be the wave 3 down, this would be a wave 4 up, and then this would be something like a wave 5 to the downside. Typically, within such strong waves to the downside, the wave 3 gets an extension, and this would still be able to be something like 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. I wouldn't overthink it. I would prefer another low within this structure to identify more clearly an initial 5-wave move to the downside. But ultimately, I wouldn't look for this to already be a 5-wave pattern complete. That would strongly indicate that after a 3-wave correction into a larger area of resistance, we would be looking with high probabilities for continuation to lower prices. However, at the same time, we are able to look for even an internal area of resistance for this to actually transform in an internal wave 5. Now, we won't focus too much on the smaller time frame. Those structures, those patterns are highly distortable at such scales, and it is best to focus on the major levels of resistance and levels of support. And if you're ultimately interested in accumulating even in the region Intel currently is in, we are still within the area of support. You can still use this support zone for a potential trade setup. It's just that it's not one of the high probability structures as we have on the larger time frame, where we are looking for a deeper retracement at least into $35.5 before looking for the reversal in a potential wave 3 to the upside that is actually expected to explode. Now, we can notice that even here, we have pushed into the area of resistance, we have pushed into the 38.2% retracement, and we have already started extending to lower prices. I wouldn't be convinced of this to be something like an A, B, C structure at this point. And if we extend directly lower, I would probably prefer to look for this being a wave 5 in the initial structure. Yeah, still part of the initial push to the downside. But for now, I wouldn't overthink it. With the break above $48, we can look for a potential reset of the larger wave 2 at the very least, if not something even more bullish. And I am not stopping or preventing the idea of this wave C in the green interpretation to already be extending to higher prices. And for now, these are the levels, this is the trade setup. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and if you enjoy our content and want to support us directly, check out our channel membership. And other than that, let me know what else you would like me to cover, and I'll do my best to do that in the days and weeks ahead. And until then, I hope you have a nice day, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.